So there's a trend going on in cinematography right now where everyone is using soft light. Soft lights in, hard lights out. It's everywhere in Hollywood right now. You'd be hard pressed to find a DP who keys with hard light now. One of the pinnacles of using soft light now are really creamy, soft highlights. These kind of really milky smooth skin tones and highlights that are something that we're all going after. We want to capture that. It looks great as cinematographers. And it's something that I really chased when I first started. So in this video, we're just going to break down how cinematographers and colors work together to achieve this look and how you can achieve this look as well. Now, before we jump in, a lot of YouTube kind of tells you that things can be done in post in one click. This is not that. I don't want to teach people bad habits. So there's a couple things you got to really do prior to even beginning shooting and while you're shooting before you can even attempt to get this look in post, in color, to really give yourself the best chance of, recreating that iconic look. The first thing you want to do is make sure you're shooting on a camera that can shoot in some sort of log format or raw. I'm shooting on an FX3 here, and that's what I'm going to be using for my example. And that's because we want to be able to manipulate the image in ways that you wouldn't be able to if a Rec 709 curve was burnt into the footage. Now you're also going to want to be sure to use soft light, really soft light. No hard light. You're going to want to use either a softbox, you can do a book light, you can do a bounce, you can key off of a bounce, off of like a bounce card or a beadboard. You can double break your light, and that's what I'm doing right now. I have right above me a softbox where I have 2 layers of diffusion. So you can kind of see that here, it's extremely soft, and that's what you're going to want to basically key with in order to get that soft, creamy look. And lastly, while you're shooting, you're going to want to expose properly. Whether you use a light meter like I do, or just false color, or you just eyeball it, you're going to want to make sure that your skin tones are properly exposed. Now, for kind of light Caucasian skin like mine, if you use false color, usually it sits about 1 stop above middle gray, which is about where I'm falling now. Now, this is important because if you're too underexposed, there's really no highlights to make look, creamy. And if you're too overexposed, whenever you pull back, everything's gonna be all wonky in your scene. So you're gonna wanna make sure that you're pretty decently exposed. You're gonna wanna nail that. And these are reasons why cinematographers at the top are able to achieve this look, because they're perfectionists. They're really good at what they do. And you really need to start practicing and nailing it in camera and not relying on just dumping your footage in Resolve and grading it to make it look good. It's not good practice. So after you shoot your scene with some soft light that's well exposed, with a pretty decent camera that's shooting a log format, I'm gonna move over Resolve and kind of show you how in the grade you can really achieve these kind of filmic, creamy highlights and skin tones. But before we get into the nitty gritty, I'm gonna show you some examples of this look, and we're really gonna analyze it because you can learn a lot from just looking at the work that you wanna emulate and look at it very closely, kind of break it down and see what is actually going into that image, and you'd be surprised what you could pull out of that.
Now, before we jump in, it's worth noting that there's never a, one button press or one technique that'll get you this Hollywood look. It's the amalgamation of a lot of different things coming together to make something look great. So don't expect this to be some transformative technique for your footage. This is just something, a little extra kiss you can do in color to really smooth out your highlights and get some really good looking images. Now, one recent movie that has some really the highlights and the skin tones look fantastic is the most recent Top Gun that came out a year or two ago. So I've pulled some stills from the film. We're going to look through it in Resolve and kind of take a look at the parades and break down what's really going on here. So this first frame here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hover over the skin tones and the highlights, because those are the areas we really want to study and see how they're getting such, a creamy look. Again, now a lot of this is lighting, the camera they chose, the lenses, maybe they had some diffusion. But we can start to kind of extract some knowledge from just looking at these and just looking at the scopes and where everything falls. So if I hover over the skin here, you'll start to notice that it's always typically falling between 60, probably 50% and 70% of our parade here. Now, even on the most, like the specular parts of the skin where the sun's really shining off, like some sweat, those pop off. But that's not, typically that's not all of the skin. We're gonna kind of disregard those areas. Pop over this frame here. Tom Cruise's face. Again, I'm gonna cruise over this lighter section of his forehead. I'll notice that on the scopes down here, the light is peaking around 60% on the scope. Another side, same thing, 60%, and then the light will gradually fall off. I'm gonna come to this frame over here, and I'm gonna go over the skin. You can see that it's between 40 and 60. That's typically where everything will fall. In the lighter areas, it's not clipping, it's not at 100, it's at 80. So we can go all the way through, you know, a number of these frames, and you'll find the same type of pattern here. These specular highlights are really at 70%. The rest of the skin is at 40. Looking up here is down at, this is down at 15 and 20. It's kind of a shadowy part. But what we can kind of notice from these frames is that a lot of times you might think you have to stretch your image to fill up the complete parades, the whole signal, you know, and that can really create some harsh contrasts, some really harsh highlights. You don't have to do that. If you start to pull frames from movies and put them into Resolve and look at the parades, you'll notice that a lot of them they only take up like half of the parade. So using that knowledge that we've kind of extrapolated from these images, we can pop over to some practice footage and see what we can do. So I have here this practice clip that I took. I lit my room, put a nice soft light, double broken light above me. And you can see this large portion of my back just to give us as much, you know, skin to look at. This feels weird. Now I use Juan Milara's conversion, his RE conversion, but you could use a CST. It's the same thing. So I'm going to quickly convert this footage over to log like so. And I'm going to condense this down and name it. I'm going to name it CST, just so if you're using a CST, this is where you would put it. You would convert slog to Rec 709 right here. Now, right away, you can see that my skin is up here at 70, and we want it to be lower. Again, if we remember back to the Top Gun footage, it was between 60 and 40 typically. This is a little bit too hard, although it does look nice. This isn't what we're going for. We want something a little bit softer. And we need to find a way to kind of target these, you know, higher luminance areas and bring them down without affecting the whole image. A lot of times you might think, oh, let me just take my, you know, curve and just bring it down. And we end up doing is just condensing basically the whole image down, and it just looks dark. It looks gross. It's not what we're after. We need to get a little bit more, you know, micro with our adjustments here. So what we can do is we can go to our qualifier, and we're going to hit the luminance button right here to where we're only targeting the luminance of our image. And I'm going to hit Shift H so I can see exactly what I'm working with. And I'm going to start dragging the low handle of our luminance bar here and just start bringing it up until something happens right here. Now remember, the skin that we have right now is up around 60. So we're going to make sure that we stay a little bit below that. I'm going to say typically around 60, 59, 600 low is pretty good to target where we want to target if you expose your footage correctly. And then I'm going to soften up the handle by pulling this to probably around, let's do 38. And then I'll hit Shift H again. And now we have a very granular selection of the highlights of our image. So now we can pop back over to our curves editor, turn on editable splines, and pull it down. We can take this spline handle right here, bring it up a little bit to give it a little bit of a knee, pull it back down even further, and you'll start to see in our image, we're pulling down just the skin highlights and making them look a little bit softer without also compressing down the rest of the image. You can see it right here on the computer screen as well. Just this overall softness comes about the image. So before, after, before, after. I'm going to quickly do this again on this other clip right here, just to kind of put it all in full speed. So I'm going to convert this to Rec 709 here. Condense this down. And then I'm going to target the highlights in my image. So go to the luminance of my qualifier, hit Shift H to see what I'm doing, and pick the highlights of my image, about 59, soften it up, go to my curves editor, make sure splines is turned on, and bring it down. Like so. And what you get is just that super smooth highlights. It's just real creamy. It looks great. And then pair that with a look. I'll add my typical look that I will throw on things. And again, you just get, look at that. They're really high on our histogram here, on our parade. And just pull them back down and they get creamy and smooth. And you can adjust the aggressiveness of your curves to where it looks good within your scene. So there you have it. there's a little tidbit, little trick you could use to really soften your highlights, soften your skin tones, make everything look creamy. And yeah, let me know if you guys found that useful. But yeah, thank you.